just didn't know. I am a guest at the opening night, standing around, drinking the wine. If I look like I've been in this room before, I make it my job to look so, I make it my job to look so good. Maybe only for a day or two, you gotta tear off my clothes, rip off my face. I am the guest from outer space. Out of reach, baby. I spun down to understand this world. Assimilate, observe ya interact. I travel down through time and space to where the best party's at, to where the best party's at. I'll go to any length. I don't need invitations, never fall from grace. I'm the guest from outer space. I never worry over what to wear. My superior brain will sort that out. I know where to stand, I know where to sit. I am your envy, baby. I'm your envy, baby. 'Cause I never put a foot wrong your some kind of uncivilized human race. I am the guest from outer space. Rip it up! Are you civilized? You try to space. Are you civilized? You try to space. Are you civilized? You from outer space. Are you civilized? 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 From outer space. Are you civilized?
Work. Dictionary definition. Paid employment. The daily grind. The 9 to 5. Earning a living. For most of us, work determines the way we see the world and the way the world sees us. But the man who lives here is different. He knows as little about work as a visitor from another planet. Nigel Buckland is 26 years old, and yet tonight he is celebrating the 10th anniversary of the day he signed on the door. Gone. Gone. All my friends. Taken. Disappeared. Blown away. I go down the office and ask about them, but they're not on the register. They've gone. Presumed employed. Could they be counted elsewhere, I ask? There's no reply. They just don't care. It's an inevitable economic process, they say. Why didn't they come for me, I say? I must be the only one left. You must be, they say and smile. You must be. I mean, these boys are brought up to it, aren't they? Unemployment. It's their birthright. Handed down from father to son in the run that it is. So what are they going to do with the job? They won't be able to cope. They'll all have to take holidays. And now there's only me left. Some kind of decaying symbol of what this once proud valley stood for. I'll be a major tourist attraction soon. They could put me in a glass cage and let families come and stare. The last unemployed man in the Ronda. Unemployicus dolicus. Put 10p in a slot and my eyes will open slowly and I'll say, I don't get up till about 4 in the afternoon. There's nothing to get up for, is there? I have tried to find work, but there's nothing around here. I'm scared to go out. People point and stare. They're coming for you next, did I say? They're coming for you. I feel like a stranger in my own town. No wonder Marx wrote about alienation.
Nigel Buckland, what do you seek?
I seek the answer to a riddle. How can I be anyone unless I have work?
Nigel Buckland, you have the power to work.
Since time immemorial, people have worked like this. It's hardly science fiction, but science, for all its advances, still seems to need a little human muscle power behind it as it builds tomorrow's brave new world. Of course, there's nothing in the world wrong with a bit of hard, healthy physical work. Nothing that is back-breaking, dirty, smelly, dangerous, hellish cold in the winter, and extremely low class. Oh, I'm not belittling the achievements of the labouring classes on or off the job. It's just that if work like this is so good, then why haven't the rich kept more of it for themselves? Of course, they'd say if it's so bad, then why do people do it on Earth?
You mean, why on earth do people do it?
Oh, yes. Why on earth do people do it? It's the comradeship of other men of like mind. Well, you see, social status it confers upon me. I work, therefore I am. Shut up, man, boys! We're going to do a TV documentary down here! It's the shape and routine it gives to what would otherwise be a blank and featureless day. Sorry, I'm afraid they're all lying. They actually do it for that crude economic indicator by which we all regulate our lifestyles. Money. Personally, I wouldn't do it for any money for a day longer than I had to. But I believe in calling a spade a spade. Spade! And in these days of mass unemployment, that's not a very politic thing to do, because a job's a job, isn't it? After all, beggars shouldn't be choosers, especially if there's already a queue with them. And so it becomes harder and harder for someone without a job to refuse an offer of any kind.
Here, darling, can I buy you a drink?
Nigel Buckland, intrepid reporter, with another film exclusive. Is this the face of the New Britain? A working women's club? Statistics tell us that though you still won't find many women on building sites, there's more of them at work than ever. Soon, they'll make up more than half the workforce. And I wonder what'll happen then.
Well, one day we'll earn as much as you do, and we won't have to apologise for having a job.
Ah, so that's what emancipation means, the right to become men.
Look, no woman thinks that equality means behaving like men do. Two wrongs don't make a right. It's just that we're fed up of being treated like part-time workers in 2 full-time jobs, looking after the family and having to pander to the boss in work. Why should you have a right to pride and achievement in work when I've got to get it from looking after your kids?
Kids? Who said anything about kids? This is just a quiet drink, all right?
I'm speaking hypothetically, you idiot. You wouldn't think it was a come-on if I was a male colleague buying you a drink, would you? So what's so different about me? Don't look at me as though I'm a creature from another planet.
Look, it's just the men are brought up to expect that they'll be the strong ones, the breadwinners. They'll provide for the families. They'll take that responsibility. So if women are going to do that now, what's left for men?
A saner world, if you ask me, a fuller world. One which includes work and family for man and woman. And then we might not all end up drinking away the sense of underfulfillment that most work leaves most workers with. Cheers.
but I'm not a woman. I'm a man. I haven't got a nesting instinct, but I do want to go out and prove that I can build this world too. Give me a pick and a shovel and a trench dig and some concrete
Oh, come on, Nigel. You've just been telling us all that that's not good enough for you.
I know. I should listen to what Mum told me, shouldn't I?
Work hard in school and you'll get a good job, right?
Right.
And what did she mean by a good job?
A nice little job in a nice little office, I suppose.
And a nice little wife to come home to? In a nice little house with a nice little garden? Well, if that's what you want, brother, there's still plenty of it around.
This man has a nice little job in a nice little office. He is the decent, conscientious, law-abiding citizen. He administered the empire. Every morning, he travels on the 726, briefcase by his side. He reads a newspaper. He's interested in the adverts for rotary hedge trimmers. And over the garden hedge, his neighbours, if they have noticed him at all, would tell you that he wouldn't say boo to a goose. In fact, on a holiday in Torbay in 1973, he did just that. The goose ignored him. Since then, he has given up holidays as too emotionally draining. Work has become his life, and he intends it to be until the day he gets his pension and his gold clock. However, he may not make it to retirement. He now has a competitor who can offer his employer far more, and not just in terms of personality. This is the latest Japanese microprocessor. It is extremely high-powered and efficient. If the clerk, working 40 hours a week for 40 years, can complete X amount of processing during his entire working life, the microprocessor can complete that same amount of work in 17.3 seconds. This has a number of implications. For instance, the clerk, earning about £5 an hour for 40 hours a week for 40 years, will gross roughly £400,000 in the course of his career. Now, the microprocessor can earn that same amount in 17.3 seconds. In another 43 seconds, it'll be a millionaire, well into his third marriage and spending most of his time in a luxury holiday home in the Bahamas, avoiding tax. Unfortunately, from now on, the clerk will earn nothing. And every 17.3 seconds, the microprocessor will also put one of his colleagues out of a job for life. This attitude is said to be Luddite. Dictionary definition: irrational resistance to labour-saving technological change. So called after Ned Ludd, a lunatic living in about 1779, who in a fit of rage smashed up 2 frames belonging to a Leicestershire hand loom operator, and so gave his name to organised groups who did the same thing on a grander scale. The good news for the clerk is that microprocessors are extremely sensitive instruments, and so are much easier to destroy than hand loom frames. The bad news is that microprocessors can now be manufactured extremely rapidly by other microprocessors. In fact, they can be run off so quickly that in 17.3 seconds, more of them could be made than a clerk could destroy if he jumped up and down them for 40 hours a week for 40 years. That is why experts say technological change is now inevitable. A more subtle approach by the clerk might be to negotiate a deal whereby the microprocessor did all the work, and he and his family were paid a generous wage, enough to keep them in reasonable comfort for the rest of their lives. This approach will be called utopian, dictionary definition, pertaining to an imaginary island, depicted by Sir Thomas More in 1515, as enjoying a perfect social, legal and political system, or in other words, hopelessly unrealistic. The most likely outcome will be that the clerk will become considerably poorer and the man who owns the microprocessor will become even richer. This is known as greed or human nature, depending whose side you're on.
No, I can't forget this evening or your face as you were leaving, but I guess that's just the way the story goes. You always smile, but in your eyes your sorrow shows. yes it shows. No, I can't forget tomorrow when I think of all my sorrow. Well, I had you there, but then I let you go. And now it's only fair that I should let you know what you should know.
Goodbye, cruel work. Technology doesn't mean the death of the worker. It means his rebirth. Well, his second childhood, anyway. Ah, Miss Wiz. 3 things. Sell the Brazilian homes at once. 4 mil at 1.6k. And make sure Toker gets the news first. And don't foul up on the exchange rates. Second. Tell McPherson I need that contract by yesterday. And if he doesn't get off his butt, his contract ends the same time. And I'm not playing. Third, tell Murdoch I don't care what the question is. The answer's still $64 million. Oh, and one more thing, Miss Wiz. Do you think you could come over here and play with me? Ciao, darling. Squiggly wiggly dinky poos. Success.
That new scheme of yours is going to work wonders for our corporate image. I can see the headlines now. Jobless get jobber jobs in the city.
We're rather an easy target for the media lefties, aren't we? I mean, anyone who isn't right on the breadline in Thatcher's Britain must be a true blue macho capitalist.
Well, at least we're not public service bureaucrats squandering public money on things the public never wanted anyway. Some of us actually worked for what we've got.
Oh, don't say that. That makes us even worse. Upwardly mobile, nouveau riche, a traitor to your own class.
Jealousy. That's what it is. Jealousy.
Well, they're not laying any guilt traps on me, darling. I intend to enjoy life's little luxuries. And come the revolution, I'll bid for exclusive television rights. And if they won't play ball, I'll tell them it's mine. And I'm taking home with me.
The coal dust clinging to them as they slowly climb the hill. If I could see the wrong one more time.
I'm sorry about that little scene earlier, darling. I've mellowed down a bit now. I was playing up to the JR image as people in the city are supposed to have.
Cutthroat, callously indifferent, sell off their own family, yeah?
Well, in my experience, you wouldn't last very long if you did too much of that. OK, you've got to be shrewd and calculating. But you have to be trusted. And to a certain extent, you have to trust. I've got a heart too, you know.
You smooth-talking yuppie.
I bet you're thinking you smooth-talking yuppie, aren't you? My roots are as working class as the next man. My grandfather was a miner.
I bet he never ate quail and drank Chateau Lafite underground.
Changing times, dear, changing times. I'm as much a worker as he ever was. And once he'd clocked off at the end of the shift, that was it. No worries. Feed the pigeons, down the institute. I never clock off. It's always there. When to buy, when to sell, tomorrow's interest rates, my next contract.
Oh, you little 110% overachieving wealth creator, you.
I won't deny that my efforts bring their own rewards. But I have to force my mind to stop working by surrounding myself with these rather lavish distractions. Speaking of lavish distractions.
A Van Cleave apples. It's beautiful. Tax write-off. Or he'll probably want me to insure it with him. You do care.
Grandfather was a miner, eh? I've got a heart too. I've got a heart. Well, let me tell you, Buckland, stand by for a cardiac arrest. You're cleared out, brother. Your European holdings are down the tubes. Wall Street's got to wear the gilt edges. I hope you're straight, because someone's blown the whistle with the tax people. See you down the Social Security Monday morning. Don't be late, or they'll cut your benefit off with that.
Well, it looks like this is the death of the worker after all. Heart donor card. That will do nicely, sir. You are now patched into the zone computer. You may select your program by thought transference. Thank you. You have selected the Grey Ages, British history, 1945 to 2066. Check. Program commences. This was a time of total war. Industries waged war with each other. Individuals manipulated collective groups and fought other individuals for jobs. The job defined the individual. Thus, I am a dentist. You are a frozen chicken packer. She is a milkman. Your work became your worth. Individuals were encouraged to regard securing a particular type of job as the fulfillment of some kind of purely personal quest. This delusion had been established at a very early stage in life by a complete withdrawal of all forms of education other than those necessary for the purely mechanical execution of the job in question. This process was known as training. To alleviate the employment crisis, the government of the day introduced schemes. Dictionary definition, underhand plan, which were intended to breathe life back into this already decaying corpse.
Cardiac arrest. Death. Morgue. Post-mortem. Oh, thank you, Lord. I'm still on the ward. A nurse. The caring, compassionate profession. What do they call it? A calling. It's called a calling. A calling, it's called. When I grow up, I want to be a nurse. Nurse! A little TLC is all I need. Tender, loving care. You can't treat a small part. You have to look at the whole being. Watch out, darling. I was brought up on carry-on films. There's about 3,000 double entendres that'll fit this little scene.
Actually, I don't know what you're making such a fuss for. It's just a little needle.
Oh, I was thinking I was in heaven.
There's nothing wrong with your imagination, anyway.
I was coming around, I thought you were an angel. You fit the part so well. I bet you always wanted to do this, didn't you?
No, I'm just a good actress, that's all. Actually, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be an astronaut. You know, buzzing around the universe, meeting little green men. But then they offered me a job here instead.
More than a job, though, isn't it? They call it a vocation, don't they? Something you really want to do with your life.
Oh, yes, like emptying bedpans. No, you're right. There is something like that in it. It's just that when you do it day in, day out, you're not quite so starry-eyed about it. I mean, it's not exactly utopia here, is it?
No. Utopia was an imaginary island depicted by Sir Thomas More in 1515 as enjoying a perfect social, political and legal system.
Come here. It must be sicker than I thought. Hot.
Oh, yeah. It was really hot there. I've been there, you know, Utopia.
Oh, did you meet any nurses there?
As a matter of fact, I didn't. And yet it seems to me that even the most perfect human society imaginable, you're still going to need people to take care of the sick. Even when the robots can do the impossible, you'll still need understanding and human contact. So you'll always have work, won't you?
Work? What's work?
Work. Dictionary definition. To make progress with difficulty.
Well, you're certainly making progress, Mr. Buckland. Actually, most of the difficulties here have the title doctor before their names.
They're just doing their jobs as well. I mean, imagine what it must be like to spend 7 years with your brain on a rack, desperate to get your qualifications. And then you discover it's not what you want to do in the first place. Or at least not what you want to do with every single minute that God gives you anyway.
And what do you do, Mr. Buckland?
That's a $64 million question. If you'd asked me that yesterday, I would have been embarrassed to tell you. Truth is, I don't do anything. God, that's not true. How can I say that? Considering all I've been through in the past few hours, you think I would have learned something? Look, it's not what you do, it's who you are. See, I've been on a kind of voyage of discovery.
Oh, and what did you learn on this incredible journey?
Well, for a start, it's not just the jobless who suffer. That's another delusion. I thought anybody who had a job was somebody. I thought being unemployed for the past 10 years was something to be ashamed of. I'm not ashamed anymore. I know I'm not lazy. I know I'm not thick. I just wouldn't do the soul-destroying rubbish that's been offered as work. It's not work. Work is satisfying and rewarding. And not just for your pocket, but for your whole being. You should get a buzz to know that your input is unique and it'll be of use.
But the reality is that society needs all these jobs doing. So it puts you in a uniform and says, you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're a frozen chicken packer. Oh, sorry, Mr. Buckland, we haven't got anything for you.
And we all take the bait, and we all play the roles. We buy our microwaves and defrost our frozen chickens, and switch our TVs on and keep our heads down in our own little boat holes. Forget we're all basically the same. We think it's impossible for someone on the dole to do something worthwhile, or for an accountant to do something worthless. Yet we're all human beings.
Yes, you are, Nigel. Yes, you are. And now, you have seen that your humanity doesn't depend on your job. And so you're not less human because you haven't got one. Yes, you feel bad today because of the way the world is arranged. But one day, all of that will change. That is the future of work, and the future of humanity, not those rather amusing attempts at so-called technology. So now my work here is complete. I wish you well in your work. But before I go, I will allow myself one small pleasure. As a woman.
What am I this time? I feel like a real person, trapped inside some awful TV documentary. Wait a minute. I am a real person. I really exist. I'm flesh and blood. Nigel Buckland, full-time jobless. Well, I hope the illusion hasn't detracted from the real message, because I'm certainly not the last unemployed man in the Rhondda, or London, or Liverpool, or Glasgow, or anywhere. And contrary to popular belief, just because you're on the dole, it doesn't mean you walk around wringing your hands about the social security, or the failure of the government to show any real initiative and understanding towards the talent that's being wasted in this country. But it is true that sometimes being on the dole can make you feel less than human. Because for generation after generation, people have been defined and pigeonholed by their jobs. And if you haven't got a job, you don't even get a pigeonhole. One day, Perhaps tomorrow, we'll all be freer to define ourselves as human beings rather than as workers. To do that, we'll have to break our obsession with the kind of training which narrows our horizons down to a single job. And we'll have to make sure that everybody gets a real education. An education that can teach us that there are more things in heaven than earth than a pay packet, a pension, and a gold clock.
These young men are watching a television programme we made about them in the year that Mrs. Thatcher came to power. They were then part of a small gang of youngsters who'd left school together in the Rhondda. They'd few worries and even fewer prospects. We found them again to find out what had happened to them. They left school with hardly an exam pass between them, and as one of them told us, they'd little hope from job interviews.
I've had an interview with the Royal Navy and labouring for Holland's painting and decorating in port.
How many tried for that job?
I'm not quite sure, about 20.
When the four of them left school, there were nearly 900 other youngsters chasing permanent jobs in the Rhondda. The best hope appeared to be government training schemes. They condemned them as a waste of time. They were unanimous in believing that the schemes did little to prepare them for real work. They believed they were cheap labour for the most menial of jobs. They laugh now at their adolescent views. They'd always treated school with a mixture of disdain and contempt. They were very young, but they were streetwise.
Suave.
In 1979, they didn't like the way they were treated by employers.
I don't want a job if I'm going to be treated like that again.
Yeah, but how well did you treat the job?
Well, I tried my best.
What was the job?
Expected more.
Michael Bebb couldn't find a local job after he finished his training scheme. We asked him then if he'd mind leaving the valley.
If you had a job, you would just take.
Yeah.
You left school, you were in the same position as you.
Not quite sure.
Are you trying really hard for a job, or some people might call you wasted not trying hard for a job?
Some people might, yes.
But are you, though?
I wouldn't say so.
Michael Bebb was clearly surprised at how he'd appeared in our original programme.
They're very dull. I think I looked very, very dull in those days. You know, really slow and not having a clue about anything. Like, very dull. I thought I looked an awful thin.
What do you think's changed you?
Well, I suppose I've had the discipline of being in the services, I suppose. You know, you learnt a lot in those days. Very, you know, more disciplined, whereas in those days, 6 years ago, I didn't give a damn about anything. But I've changed a lot to become more mature these days, I should imagine.
He'd had to grow up quickly. He was a gunner on the aircraft carrier Hermes. In April 1982, he was on deck as she left Portsmouth for the Falklands War. He'd joined the Navy the year before because he couldn't get a job in the Rhondda, and he wanted to see the world. Michael and the rest of the crew had been preparing for a goodwill visit to America when the Falklands were invaded. No one was more surprised than him when his ship was diverted.
Thought the Falklands was in Scotland, but it was a lot further away than that.
Did you have any special training for going to the Falklands?
Oh, yeah. A lot of gunnery training, seaman training,
putting out fires, everything.
Had you any idea of what you were actually going to at that time?
No, no idea at all. It all happened so fast.
Were you worried?
No. It was for a couple of days, but got over it. There was a lot of people who were really worried, but I wasn't.
During the actual war out there, what did you do on Hermes?
It was just manning the guns, waiting for the Argentinians to attack. We didn't see that much action compared to everyone else.
Did they actually attack you there?
Well, we could see them in the distance, but they never got anywhere near us because the ships that were around us shot them down. And of course we had a lot of Harriers on board, and it was more or less in the air and at sea.
Were you there right till the end of the war?
Yeah, right the way through.
A few years on, what do you remember most about the war?
Just seeing ships on fire around us and airplanes crashing into the sea.
And after it was over, did you get a chance to go ashore at all?
No, no chance at all. We just sailed from Portsmouth. And then 108 days later, we came back to Portsmouth again. We didn't see anything. We came into Portsmouth and there was thousands of people all around. Family waiting for me. It was very emotional. It was good. Great.
For Michael Bebb, like thousands of other young sailors, his homecoming from the war left vivid and happy memories.
Family hired a bus and they all went down to meet me. And we came back, we stopped off in a pub in Southampton, celebrated a bit.
They actually hired a bus from the...
From here, yeah, and they all went down to wait for me, yeah.
Did you know they were going to do that?
No, no idea at all. I would have walked straight past them and I seen a flag with my name on, "Welcome home, Michael." Otherwise I would have missed them. I would have just rushed home to the station and caught a train home.
Michael Bebb proudly received his war medal, but within a year he'd left the Navy and was on the dole. He moved to London, where he found his digs worse than anything he'd had on the Hermes.
It was just a small room, 2 beds in it, and me and my friend, and he was working as an electrician and I was labouring.
Could you make ends meet?
No. No. Sometimes you'd go a day or 2 without food and things like that, you know, it was far too expensive.
He was always welcome back home in Treorchy, but he wanted a job, so he kept applying. He found it a depressing experience.
I applied for security jobs in Milton Keynes, Northampton, Leicester, but I had a reply from the one in Milton Keynes. They said, we're interested in you, but you've got to buy an house first, like, in Milton Keynes. I can't understand how they thought that.